souls longing for authentic connection. I am Naomi, and from this serene space where moonlight filters through the branches of an old pine tree and casts ephemeral shadows on rice paper, I warmly and heartily welcome you to Minimalist Charm. Today, I want us to venture together into a territory of the heart that we often neglect or misunderstand in our relentless pursuit of perfection, our human relationships. We will explore the Wabi-sabi code in your relationships, discovering how the ancient Japanese wisdom of finding beauty in imperfection can help us cultivate more authentic, deeper, and more resilient bonds. I remember a time several years ago when I was visiting my grandmother Akiko. In her tokonoma, that small altar or sacred niche in the main room, there was no ostentatious or perfectly polished object, but a simple ceramic bowl, noticeably asymmetrical, and with a small crack that she herself had repaired using the kintsugi technique, that golden lacquer that celebrates wounds. I asked her why she chose to display such an imperfect piece in such a special place. She smiled with her characteristic serene wisdom and, stroking the golden line on the bowl, said, "Naomi-chan, this crack is not a flaw. It is part of its history, of its life. It makes it unique and, to me, even more beautiful. So too are the people and relationships we love, precious not despite their imperfections, but often because of them." That simple lesson about wabi-sabi, the beauty of the imperfect, the impermanent, and the incomplete, stayed with me forever. And I have found that its application to the complex world of our human relationships is deeply liberating and transformative. In our contemporary culture, often influenced by idealized images in the media and social networks, we tend to seek a kind of unattainable perfection in our relationships. We expect our friends, partners, and family members to always be understanding, infallible, and to meet our expectations to the letter. And even more demanding, we impose on ourselves the burden of being perfect for others. This quest for flawlessness leads to frustration, constant disappointment, and prevents us from appreciating the genuine beauty and richness that lies precisely in the imperfect humanity of those around us and ourselves. Japanese minimalism, in its most philosophical form, invites us to simplify not only our spaces, but also our expectations, and to find peace and joy in accepting reality as it is. Today, I want to share with you some reflections and paths inspired by the spirit of wabi-sabi to learn how to decipher that code of imperfect beauty in our bonds and thus cultivate more authentic, compassionate, and lasting relationships. One of the first and most fundamental insights that wabi-sabi offers us for our relationships is the radical acceptance of imperfection, both in others and in ourselves. Just as a handmade ceramic bowl will never be perfectly symmetrical, and its charm lies precisely in those irregularities that reveal the hand of the artisan, each human being is a unique mixture of light and shadow, strengths and weaknesses, virtues and flaws. To expect someone else to be perfect, or to expect ourselves to be perfect, is to deny the very essence of the human condition. Wabi-sabi invites us to look beyond the surface, to find beauty not in the absence of flaws, but in the authenticity of a complete being, with their scars and peculiarities. This acceptance does not mean resignation to harmful behavior, but a compassionate recognition that we are all in a process of learning and growth. I think of Isabel, a talented graphic designer in Mexico City who struggled for years with her relationship with her mother. Her mother, though loving in her own way, had a strong and often critical personality, which caused constant friction and deep pain for Isabel. She longed for a perfect mother, like the one she saw in the movies, one who would always understand and support her unconditionally. This unfulfilled expectation kept her in a state of frustration and resentment. Through our conversations, we explored the idea of applying wabi-sabi to that relationship. I suggested that she try to see her mother not as the idealized mother she was not, but as the imperfect woman she was, with her own history, her own wounds, and her own limitations. That she try to find, among the cracks in her character, the glimmers of love and concern that, although clumsily expressed, were also present. It was not an easy or quick process. It required a lot of patience and self-compassion. But gradually, as she let go of her demand for perfection, Isabel began to feel an unexpected relief. She was able to accept her mother as she was, with her flaws, and in doing so, Paradoxically, the relationship began to improve. They found a new way of connecting, more real and less conflictual, based on mutual acceptance of their respective imperfections. I invite you to reflect on your own relationships. Is there someone you are judging too harshly for not meeting your expectations of perfection? Can you find beauty in their complete humanity, even with their flaws? This acceptance of imperfection naturally leads us to value authenticity over appearance, fostering vulnerability as a bridge to genuine connection. In a society that often pressures us to project an image of constant success, happiness, and control, being authentic, showing ourselves as we are with our doubts, fears, and fragilities, can seem risky. However, Wabi-sabi teaches us that it is precisely in this vulnerability that true beauty and the possibility of deep and meaningful connection lie. A wabi-sabi object does not pretend to be what it is not. Its material honesty, with its marks of use and patina of time, is what gives it its charm. In the same way, when we dare to be vulnerable in our relationships, when we share our true emotions and experiences without masks or pretensions, we invite others to do the same, creating a space of trust and intimacy where bonds can flourish. I met Andres, a young lawyer from Buenos Aires, who, despite having many acquaintances and an active social life, felt deeply alone. In his interactions, he always tried to put his best foot forward, to be funny, intelligent, successful, carefully hiding any signs of weakness or insecurity. He feared that if others saw his true self, with all his imperfections, they would reject him. This constant acting left him exhausted and disconnected. I told him about how Wabi-sabi values raw authenticity over artificial perfection. I encouraged him to start sharing a little more of his inner world, his concerns, his dreams, even his mistakes, in small doses and with people he trusted. At first, he was terrified by the idea. But one day, he dared to confide in a close friend about a difficulty he was going through at work. To his surprise, his friend not only didn't judge him, but shared a similar experience and offered his support. That small act of vulnerability opened the door to a much deeper and more meaningful connection than he had ever experienced. It was like taking off a heavy suit of armor, Naomi, he told me. I discovered that being authentic, even with my flaws, doesn't distance me from others, but brings me closer in a much more real way. Authenticity is a magnet for true connections. Do you allow yourself to be vulnerable in your important relationships? Do you create a safe space for others to be vulnerable with you as well? Another essential aspect of the Wabi-sabi code applied to relationships is the appreciation of impermanence and the changing nature of bonds, embracing each stage with gratitude. Nothing in nature or in human life is static. Everything is in constant flux and transformation. Relationships, like wabi-sabi objects that show the traces of time, evolve, change, sometimes grow stronger, sometimes weaken, and sometimes end. Clinging to a fixed idea of how a relationship should be or how it was in the past only causes us suffering. Wabi-sabi, with its deep connection to the Buddhist philosophy of impermanence, Mujo, invites us to accept this natural flow, to appreciate each moment and each stage of a relationship for what it is, without trying to stop time or force things to be different. This does not mean passivity, but rather active acceptance and a willingness to adapt and find beauty in each phase of the cycle. I think of Clara, a woman from Madrid whose lifelong friendship with her best friend had begun to drift apart due to changes in their personal lives. One had married and moved to another city, while the other remained single and focused on her career. Clara felt sad and resentful, clinging to memories of the closeness and complicity they used to have, and lamenting that things were no longer the way they used to be. This resistance to change prevented her from enjoying the new form their friendship could take, perhaps less frequent in daily contact, but not necessarily less deep. I suggested she look at their friendship through the lens of wabi-sabi, to appreciate the beauty of what had been, to accept the impermanence of that particular stage, and to open herself up to discovering the beauty of the new phase, with its own nuances and possibilities. Perhaps the conversations would now be less frequent, but more intentional. Perhaps the encounters would be more spaced out, but more valued. By letting go of the need for the friendship to remain identical to the past, Clara was able to reconnect with her friend from a place of greater acceptance and appreciation for the present, finding a new depth in their bond, adapted to their new circumstances. Is there a relationship in your life where you are clinging to the past, preventing yourself from appreciating its present form? Can you find beauty in its evolution, even if it is different from what you expected? Wabi-sabi also teaches us the importance of simplicity and modesty in our interactions, valuing small, sincere gestures over grand displays or elaborate expectations. In a world that often values the grand, the spectacular, and the complicated, Wabi-sabi reminds us of the profound beauty and power of the simple, the humble, and the direct. A kind word spoken at the right moment, attentive and non-judgmental listening, or a small act of service done from the heart can have a much greater impact on a relationship than expensive gifts or elaborate declarations that lack a genuine emotional connection. Simplicity in relationships does not mean superficiality, but rather a stripping away of the superfluous, of masks and power games, to get to the essence of human encounter. David, a young entrepreneur from Lima, Peru, felt enormous pressure to impress his partner and friends. He organized expensive dinners, bought expensive gifts, and tried to always be on top of the latest trends. However, despite his efforts, he felt that his relationships lacked genuine warmth and depth. Talking about wabi-sabi and his appreciation for the beauty of simplicity, he began to question this need for ostentation. He decided to try a different approach. Instead of focusing on grand gestures, he began to pay more attention to the small details. A handwritten note for her partner, an unexpected call to a friend just to see how they were doing, offering to help a neighbor with a simple task. She discovered to her amazement that these simple, sincere gestures elicited a much warmer response and a more authentic connection than all her previous efforts to impress. "It's as if by simplifying I found the true essence of connection, Naomi," she told me. "I no longer feel the need to prove anything, just to be present and genuine." In your own relationships, are you perhaps focusing too much on the external, on the complicated? Could you simplify your interactions, seeking beauty and power in small, sincere gestures from the heart? Finally, the Wabi-sabi Code invites us to cultivate patience and compassion, both toward others and ourselves, recognizing that relationships, like objects that age gracefully, need time and care to mature and reveal their true beauty. In a culture of immediacy, where we expect quick results and instant solutions, we often lack the patience necessary to navigate the challenges and complexities inherent in any meaningful human relationship. We want problems solved now, wounds healed immediately, people to change according to our wishes. Wabi-sabi, however, reminds us that growth and transformation are organic, slow, and often subtle processes. A tea bowl does not acquire its patina and character overnight. It is the result of years of use, care, small accidents, and repairs. Similarly, deep and resilient relationships are built over time, through patience in difficult moments, compassion in the face of mistakes and weaknesses, and a constant commitment to caring for one another. I met Marta and Luis, a couple from Barcelona who had been together for many years and were going through a crisis. They had accumulated resentments, communication had become difficult, and both felt distant and disillusioned. They were considering separating, feeling that their relationship was broken and irreparable. I told them about kintsugi, the art form that not only repairs what is broken, but also beautifies it, turning scars into a testament to resilience. I suggested that before making a final decision, they try to apply that philosophy to their relationship, to look at their cracks, not as the end, but as an opportunity to rebuild something new, perhaps stronger and more conscious. I encourage them to arm themselves with patience, seek professional help if necessary, and try to listen to each other with renewed compassion, remembering the love that had brought them together. It was an arduous process, full of ups and downs. But by committing to repair their bond with the gold of patience, honest communication, and compassion, they discovered that their relationship could not only be saved, but could be transformed into something even deeper and more meaningful, enriched by overcoming the crisis. "Our scars are now part of our history, Naomi," Marta told me sometime later. They remind us that true love isn't perfect, but it is incredibly resilient if nurtured with patience. Are you willing to invest time, patience, and compassion in your important relationships, especially when they are going through difficult times? My dear friends, the Wabi-sabi code, applied to our human relationships, is an invitation to love in a more real, deeper, and more liberating way. It teaches us to let go of the burden of unattainable perfection and find moving beauty in the authenticity of imperfection, both in ourselves and in those we love. It reminds us that cracks and scars are not signs of failure, but testimonies of life, growth, and the resilience of the human spirit. By embracing imperfection, authenticity, impermanence, simplicity, and compassion in our bonds, we create a space where relationships can breathe, evolve, and flourish in ways we never imagined when we were caught up in the pursuit of a non-existent ideal. We discover that true connection is not found in the absence of flaws, but in the courageous acceptance of our shared humanity, with all its light and shadow. It is a path that requires courage, patience, and deep honesty, but the reward is immense: more authentic, more meaningful relationships, and ultimately more filled with a quiet, lasting beauty. As an old Japanese proverb that my grandmother Akiko used to whisper while gazing at an old tree twisted by the wind in her garden says, a tree that to many might seem imperfect but to her radiated incomparable strength and beauty, Kao wa kokoro no kagami nari, which roughly translates as, the face is the mirror of the heart. May our relationships, reflecting the acceptance and compassion of a heart that has embraced wabi-sabi, show the world the radiant beauty of authenticity. I sincerely hope that these reflections on the Wabi-sabi code in relationships have offered you a new light, a new perspective from which to view your own connections with more tenderness and wisdom. If these ideas have resonated deeply with you, I warmly invite you to join our community here at Encanto Minimalista. Subscribe to the channel to continue exploring these paths of growth, authenticity, and meaningful connection together. And if this message has touched your soul or offered you comfort or inspiration, please give us a like. Your support helps us immensely to bring these seeds of wisdom to more hearts that may be longing for more real and fulfilling relationships. Now, as always, I would love to read your stories and reflections. Comment below on which aspect of wabi-sabi you feel you could apply to one of your current relationships to cultivate it with more authenticity and compassion, or share an experience where you have found beauty in the imperfection of a bond. Write, I love my imperfect bonds, if you feel inspired to embrace this approach in your life. Thank you so much for your presence, your openness, and your courage to explore the depths of the human heart. May you find immense beauty and deep peace in the loving acceptance of all the imperfections that make us wonderfully human.